Welcome to the aquarium. My name is Danielle. I'm one of the educators here at the aquarium, and today we are talking about Endangered Species Day. As always, if you have any questions at all, you can leave them in the comment section, and we will get to those later on at the end of our talk. We are talking about endangered species today, so those are animals that are at a risk of becoming extinct in the wild. So if you want to learn more about that, you can visit the IUCN Red List website to find out how these animals are doing in their natural habitats. If they are evaluated, the way they got there is somebody with a scientific background looked to see how many of that animal was in that habitat area and how well they reproduce and how well their habitat space is going. So is their ecosystem healthy as well? And then they can be evaluated on that website. If you'd like to learn more, visit that website, and that actually helps out a lot because you can do research on how to help out your specific favorite animals so that they can survive in the wild. If the species is evaluated, it is on a list from least concern, which means they're pretty good in the wild and we don't really have to be concerned about their population size, to extinct, which, as I'm sure most of you know, that means there's none left in the wild. Most of the large animals that you see behind me are listed as either vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So our first animal we're going to talk about is the vulnerable ones, which means they are at a high risk for becoming extinct in the wild. And those would be our sharks. So we have 3 species of sharks in the habitat behind me, and they are the sand tiger sharks, which are these large ones that you can see swimming behind me. We also have sandbar sharks. Those will be the fast ones. And the ones you won't see because they're lazy are the brown ones, and they are called nurse sharks. And on top of that, another species that is vulnerable in this habitat is the stingray that you will see. There's only one stingray in this habitat. It is a rough-tailed stingray, and every so often you'll see him swimming behind me. One of the reasons why so many of these animals are not doing so well in the wild is because of unsustainable fishing practices. So around 70% of all sharks in the world have decreased in the past 50 years. There's been a 70% decrease of sharks in the past 50 years, which is a lot. And sharks are extremely important to the ecosystem. So if a shark is gone from their habitat space, the fish they were naturally eating, their populations will rise, and then those animals that those fish were eating will be gone because there's just not enough available food out there. We call this a trophic cascade, where one species is really large in size and another one is small, and that kind of makes a ecosystem unbalanced. Each ecosystem is balanced really well naturally, but when one species goes extinct or has a lower population size, sometimes those ecosystems are not able to level out and get back to that correct size that they should be at. And one of the big reasons this happens is because of unsustainable fishing practices. So sharks and other animals, when they are swimming around, they don't really recognize fishing nets and other things like that. And usually when people go fishing, they'll take a big net off the back of a boat, drag it through the sand, and catch everything. Not just the fish they were meaning to catch, but also sharks, turtles, stingrays, dolphins, and a whole slew of other animals. Most of them do not survive the process of getting brought into the boat and thrown back in the water. So a lot of those animals could pass away that way. If you want to help out, go to the website oceanwise.ca. It does help out a lot on how to make sure those animals, how we can help them in their natural habitat. It makes a big difference on choosing the fish from the grocery store or from a restaurant, and getting those ones that are not harming the environment and can actually support people eating them, because people are one of the animals that are the natural predators of fish. So we just need to share that with the rest of the animals in the ocean. On top of that, some sharks do need to keep swimming to breathe properly. So one of those sharks would be one of the ones you can see behind me. They are sandbar sharks. They're the ones swimming really quickly. They are a type of shark called a ram ventilator. That means when they are swimming, the oxygenated water will go over through their mouth, over their gills, and that is how they are breathing. So the swimming motion allows them to breathe properly. If they get caught in a fishing net, they are unable to breathe. So that is really scary and sad for those animals and really a big problem for that ecosystem. Our next animal we're going to talk about are our turtles. So we have two turtles here at the aquarium. They are green sea turtles. Their names are Spot and Chewy. You may or may not see them swimming around behind me, but you can visit our live camera anytime to see them at any point if you visit our website, ripleysaquariumofcanada.com. And on top of that, there are 7 species of turtles in the whole world. The green sea turtles are the second largest, and I see one of our turtles right over there. And on top of that, all 7 species of turtles are actually listed as vulnerable or worse. And our green sea turtles are actually listed as endangered. So that means they are at the point where they're at a high risk for becoming extinct, which is actually very scary for those animals. One of the big reasons turtles happen to be in that category is because of pollution and plastic pollution. So pretty much every single sea turtle that has been found washed ashore and a scientist has looked on the inside of their bodies, they have found plastics in their bodies, and that is the cause of them to have passed away. There's so much plastic in the ocean, but most sea turtles are able to eat things like jellyfish, and they get confused sometimes because a plastic bag floats in the water, and a jellyfish is a plankton, so the water motion pushes the jellyfish and moves the jellyfish. So it moves in the same way. Turtles and even people can't even tell those apart very easily. A turtle naturally will eat a jellyfish, and they get confused and accidentally eat those plastic bags, and that can go in their stomach. Over 1 million animals die every year by eating plastic or getting tangled in it. Turtles, they breathe oxygen from the air just like people. So if there's a fishing net in the water, it definitely can harm a turtle as well. The best way that you can help is to use less plastic. So think about those plastic bags and other disposables. So single-use items, you don't want to use those anymore. You want to switch to more reusable options or things that are more sustainable or durable. So there are lots of different products out there. Just do your research and think before you buy or purchase a new product. And think about how long you're going to have this product for. How will it degrade in the water? How can it be recycled? Where can I put it so it can be recycled effectively? All those are really good questions to ask. Because if you look behind me, this is our habitat here at the aquarium. This is our shark tank. If this was the real ocean, there would be plastic floating at the surface of the water. And as you can see, nope. It's very nice and pristine here for our habitat and our animals. Plastic is super dangerous for those animals in the wild. That large floating island of plastic that is in the Pacific Ocean is about the size of Quebec right now. It's humongous. And plastic from Canada has been found worldwide. It is a global problem. So we can do a global solution and help clean up and share what we know, which does make a big difference. Our last animal I'm going to talk about today is the one that is critically endangered. So that means they're very close to extinction in the wild. And that would be our sawfish. So I have a sawfish rostrum here. That's the fancy name for their nose. I know they look like an animal that might be out of a horror movie, but they're just a highly modified stingray. They don't have a stinger, but they have a really specialized nose, which we call a rostrum. They can either use it to dig for food or to hit fish to stun them to eat them. It is filled with sensors. They're able to find their food very easily. There are only 5 species of sawfish left in the world. This one I'm holding is from a dwarf sawfish, but the ones we have in our habitat are green sawfish, and we have 2 of them. The larger of the 2 happens to be our largest animal here at the aquarium. All species of sawfish are listed as either vulnerable or worse on the IUCN Red List. So it is very important to try to help these animals. One of the big reasons why there are less sawfish in the world is because this is a really cool body part. And for a long time, people decided that it would make a really cool souvenir. That's how we got this one. It was donated to us by somebody who didn't want to keep it anymore. So we can use it for teaching. So all of you can learn from the mistakes of others. So this animal was caught just for their nose so that we could see something pretty on it, which I don't think is the best idea for this animal. And that is very dangerous for these animals that use a structure like this to help them find their food and to survive. Not only does this happen to animals like sawfish, but there are animals like sharks And there are animals like stingrays that lose their fins all the time because people will fish them for just their fins. And that is really rough on animals that need to swim to breathe. So we call that shark finning, and it is not a good practice for these animals. One of the big reasons that happens is for a long time people thought sharks and stingrays were really scary because they have these large teeth and you think they're eating machines, but honestly they have pointy teeth to catch animals that swim quickly, like fish. There are some sharks that have flat teeth, and they use those to crush shelled food. They don't need to swim to catch a fish, their teeth are flat. There are lots of species of sharks in the world right now, but all of them are decreasing just because of fear and also because of fishing practices. So one of the things to keep in mind is that we here at the aquarium go diving in here more than once a week just to clean the fake coral. And don't worry, we go in there with the animals. Sawfish is in there, the sharks are in there, the turtles are in there. And to make sure everything stays nice and safe, we just give the animals their space by putting a stick near their face, and they'll swim away from us. And nothing bad ever happens because we are really nice and careful with our animals, and also they like to eat fish and not people. If you're still a little worried about sharks, keep this in mind. Millions of people swim in the ocean every year and nothing bad happens to them. Around 10 or less people die every year by sharks. And around 150 million sharks die every year because of people. It is a very scary large number of sharks that die every year for the reasons that I had listed earlier as well. And a lot of people are still very afraid of sharks. If you want to feel better, if you were swimming in the ocean, there's a good chance a shark already saw you and went, well, that person is splashing too much and it's way too loud, and I don't want anything to do with that person, and swam away. And there are much more dangerous things out there. One of them mainly being mosquitoes, or slipping and falling in the bathtub, or sitting under a coconut, or just taking a selfie and walking off a cliff. All of those are much more dangerous than a shark. These just happen to have really big teeth, and movies portray them as bad guys. And we only ever hear those scary, sad stories. So the best thing you can do to help the sharks and the sawfish is to talk about what you know. Give a voice to those other animals that can't speak so we can help them in their natural habitat. And I know a lot of you are probably a little worried about the animals we have here. I mean, we have an aquarium. Obviously, they're not in the wild. You might think it's sad that they're not in the big ocean. However, one of the reasons we have these animals is they are ambassador species. And that means we are using them to share with all of you how amazing they are and what we can do to help the ones in their natural habitat. So these animals are here. You can come and visit when we're open, and you can see these animals in a close interaction without scaring one in the wild or spending a lot on a plane ticket. And that means that you might change something in your own personal life to impact those species in the ocean. And that actually makes a giant difference in our world. So if you would like to help out, the best way to do that is to come and just be open-minded about these animals and their habitats. And we'd love for you to inspire change in your life, to help, to share, and to think about more than just human issues and human problems. We are able to make lots of good change in our world if we try really hard and change our habits. There are around 200 to 2,000 species that go extinct every year. And today is the day where we try to celebrate and change that. So I challenge you, or at least try to challenge yourself for the next week or month, to give yourself something to do that's a little different, like choose sustainable packaging or purchase sustainable products from the stores or grocery stores, or when you order online, try to find a new sustainable source. Try to pick up garbage when you go to a park next. We're coming up to a long weekend. It's a good idea to try to clean up what you can and to share what you know. Talk about it. Tell at least one other person about how animals we are losing some of our species diversity in our world and how we can help. We can help by reducing our plastic impact, and also we can help out as well by choosing more sustainable food practices, and also by just sharing that these animals are not as scary as you may think. Every single little bit helps. Use your voice to help those that do not have one, and it will make a big difference in our world. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions, now would be the time. We're going to go over some questions. Amazing. So our first question is, where do we get the animals from? There are 3 methods of us getting animals here at the aquarium. The first one is they could be born here. Second, they could be born or rescued at another facility. And the third one is they come from the ocean. If they're coming from the ocean or another wild resource, we only take what we're allowed to take from their wild habitat. And we have to follow very strict rules, like we have to catch them in a certain way. We have to catch the right gender, the right number, and the right size of animal. If they are not following those restrictions, we tag them and put them back in the water so that so we can kind of see where they're going, especially for the sharks, but also so we don't impact the wild habitat, which we never want to do. We want to make sure that our habitats are always safe in the ocean. Next question. Are sharks and stingrays related? The answer is yes. Sharks and rays are in the same group, which we call elasmobranchs. So there are 3 things they have in common, and they are cartilaginous skeleton. So the inside of their bodies, instead of made with bone, it's made with a material called cartilage that you can find in your ears and your nose. It's very buoyant. That's why they're very good swimmers. They also have the same type of teeth. So I know you can't really see this right now, but I do have a shark's tooth here. They lose them all the time in order to grow larger. So there's all these backup teeth ready to go for when a shark needs to have a new sharp teeth. And the same thing happens for a stingray, where they lose their teeth all the time in order to grow large, in order to catch their food all the time. And the third thing they have in common is they have the same type of scales. So sharks and rays all have scales that will stick out a little bit from their bodies to help them swim through the water more smoothly. There's a little bit of a difference there. Sharks have lots of scales and they have like body armor, and stingrays have few scales. So they have mucus, like snot, on the top of their bodies. So if you ever touch a stingray and touch a shark, you'll notice they have 2 very different textures. If you are touching those animals, make sure it is at a place that is allowing you to touch them. You're doing it in the way that those people are telling you how to, and never ever touch a wild animal without the animal being as a part of a program. Riverside Public School asked, how many sharks are there in the ocean? There are quite a few sharks in the ocean, but their number is decreasing. If you're wondering how many sharks we have here at the aquarium, we have around 50 sharks in total. It's hard to count because one species of shark keeps having babies. But in the habitat behind me, there are around 12 sharks, 3 species in here, and 12 species of sharks in total in our facility. How often do we feed the fish? It depends on the animal. The sharks are fed 3 days a week, but the other animals, they can be fed every day or multiple times a day, depending on how much they eat in their natural habitat. So a seahorse will eat daily, multiple times a day, because they need to be able to, their stomachs are not like a real stomach. Their food doesn't sit in it. So we have to feed them multiple times a day to make them nice and happy and healthy. And here at the aquarium, we try our best to give them the food resources that they would normally have in their natural habitat. And if we can't do that, we do the same nutrition content. So for example, our turtles are fed lettuce, and lettuce does not grow in the ocean. So it's the same nutrition content of their regular food, which is seagrass. How do fish get their calcium? Well, normally in their natural habitat, it comes from their food. But here in the aquarium, we give our animals vitamins. So if they don't get calcium in their natural diet, we make their diet have a little bit of vitamins in there. So for our larger sharks, we push vitamins in their food when we feed them. Next question. Do you have tiger sharks? We do not have tiger sharks. The animals that we do have are very similar to tiger sharks. They are called sand tiger sharks. Not at all closely related. Their names are very similar, and that is all. So those big ones that you see, which are obviously all not near me right now, but the larger sharks behind me are called sand tiger sharks. A tiger shark is much too large for us to have here at our aquarium. Next question. Mr. Pembleton's class would like to know, how many sawfish species were there 100 years ago? I am so sorry that I do not know the answer to that question. However, I'm sure you can do a little of research to find out how many sawfish species there were in our world before. Currently, there are only 5 species of sawfish and 1 outgrouping, so 6 total that have that kind of big nose. And that's not that many, but they are a pretty slow animal, and we have a boy and a girl, and they haven't had any interest in each other, and we would have loved for them to have babies. So they're not the best at having babies all on their own. Next question. Why don't they eat the fish? That's my most commonly asked question. Why don't the sharks eat the fish in the habitat? And the answer is we feed them well enough so they won't eat the fish in the habitat. So when we feed our sharks, we take a big stick, we put the food right in front of their face, and they eat the food off that stick. And that means they won't steal the food from any of the other, they won't take the fish from our habitats. So we are also feeding those smaller fish at the same time as the larger sharks by throwing food in the water for them. The only time we ever lose a fish in this habitat is because it is a shark, a fish from their habitat, and then the food. And it is a good chance that a shark will not notice that there's a fish in between them and their food. But a shark normally in their natural habitat would eat 1 large meal a month, and here we feed them 3 times a week and divide that large meal over the course of a month. So they're never actually really that hungry. So they're just eating the food that we also want them to eat, which is way tastier than any of the fish they live with. We give them more meaty fish, and they live with bonier fish. Next question. Do we have leatherback sea turtles? The answer is no. We only have green sea turtles here at the aquarium. Leatherback sea turtles are the largest sea turtle in the world, but the green sea turtle is second largest, and they're the largest one with a hard shell. Next question. Roundtree Public School, which I recognize that name, would like to ask, how big is Dangerous Lagoon? So this habitat is our largest habitat here at the aquarium, and it is around 2 million liters of water. Sorry, 2 million liters of water. That's a lot of water we have here. It's about half of the size of all the water in the whole building. So it has a lot of stuff in it. So it is a very large habitat. It's definitely our showstopper habitat here. Next question. Do we train sharks not to bite? No. Most of our animals do bite, just like you. You all bite your food. So these animals, they normally bite their food. That's very natural. We do take safety precautions so their hands are not near their mouths when we feed them. So we are feeding them with a stick, but we don't need to train them not to bite. We would like them to bite their food. That's natural for them. They also do bite each other to communicate, which is also very natural. So if you visit an aquarium and you see scarring on a shark or bite marks on them, that's just how they communicate and a process of their mating behavior. So it's not a big deal for us. As I mentioned before, sharks have that special scales in their body that act like body armor, and that protects them from any bite marks from another shark. And the only training we do with the bigger sharks is getting them to go to a certain spot to get their food. So we always feed them in the same place and around the same time, so they know when feeding happens. Next question. Roundtree Public School would like to know, how many animals are there in this habitat here, the shark habitat? There's a lot. I'd say there's over 100 species in here, and probably more than 1,000 individual animals in here. It's hard to count. I mean, you can try if you want to, but there are a lot. Of the bigger animals, we have 1 sawfish. There are 12 sharks in total, 2 sea turtles, and 2 there's 1 stingray and 2 sawfish. I think I said that wrong. And there's a bunch of fish in here. My favorite fish in here are the ones up at the top. They look like barracudas. They're called tarpons. I love them. They can breathe out of the water, just like a person or a turtle can. And they can breathe underwater. That fish is amazing. Jocelyn would like to know, what is your favorite part of your job? What I am doing right now, sharing with all of you all the fun, cool stuff about underwater animals. Thank you for asking. Mr. Mustard's class would like to know, are the fish afraid of sharks? Not really. I mean, yes, they know that a shark could technically eat them, but fish normally live in the same habitat with sharks. So normally, if a fish is swimming in an ordinary fashion, they will not be afraid of a shark. If a fish is swimming in kind of a less than healthy fashion, where maybe they're injured or they're sick, then maybe a shark will sense them a little bit better because they're an easier target. Most often our fish don't fall in that category because we take really good care of them here. But that would be the point where a fish might be afraid of a shark, or if a shark is swimming faster, and that would put off a little danger sensor in a fish's head, and then they'd want to swim away because they think they're being chased. Next question by Addie. Why do people take shark fins? One of the main reasons that happens is for a long time people were afraid of sharks, so they were putting just that body part into things like shark fin soup. And it has become a traditional soup in certain countries of the world. And that's the main reason why people just take the fins, and it is not the best idea. So if you're able to switch out of eating that, that is what I would recommend. All right, next question. How many rows of teeth do sharks have? They can have somewhere between like 4 to 15 rows of teeth. So they have lots of backups. Generally, a shark will have around 50,000 teeth in their lifetime, which is way more than a person. One of the main reasons for this, not only to keep them sharp, but because they don't have protective enamel on the outside of their teeth. So people, we have enamel layers on the outside of our teeth to protect our teeth and make them last a really long time. But theirs are just dented. So they only last for about one meal. So for them to stay nice and sharp, they have to lose them. Next question. What is the most endangered species in the ocean? Very tough question. There are a lot out there that are very endangered. It's hard to say because generally speaking, if they're very endangered, we won't have them here. So at one point we did have an animal called a leafy sea dragon, and we are not able to have those at aquariums anymore because they are super critically endangered in their natural habitat, and you're not allowed to have them at aquariums anymore because we're trying to protect their wild habitat and those wild animals. Mrs. Maleka's class wants to know, why do sharks need to swim to breathe? So only a few species of sharks need to do that. It's about 30%. And that's because their breathing method is a little different. They are breathing by opening their mouth. The water's going in their mouth and over their gills, and the swimming motion allows them to do that. So they don't actually have muscles in their bodies to allow them to intake water. So in our bodies, we have one of those muscles. It is called a diaphragm. It is in your belly area. If you have hiccups, that's because your diaphragm is spasming, and it's very normal, but that's what makes that noise. And for a lot of sharks, they are unable to move those muscles in order to take in water. And for some sharks, they can do that. So the sand tiger sharks and another shark that we have here called a white tip reef shark, they use buccal pumping, which means creating a negative chamber in their throat and then moving the water in that way. And then a few of our other sharks, like our white spotted bamboo sharks and our zebra sharks and nurse sharks, which are the brown ones in here, they use spherical breathing. So they have a hole right near their eye, and they're going to breathe in through there and out their gill slits. And that's similar to how we breathe, where we have a nose and a mouth. So that's kind of like them breathing in through their nose and breathing out their mouth. Our next question is, how many species are at the aquarium? So in total, we have 16,000 animals here at the aquarium, and that is around 500 species of animals. And that is a lot of different things that we have here. So we have a giant team of people helping us out here at the aquarium, making sure everybody stays alive and healthy. Miss Curtis's class asked, how do you tell a male from female sharks apart? Oh, I love how you asked that. I really hope that we can see the difference. Oh, our stingray friend is here, and that shark that just swam past is a sandbar. If you wanted to see the sharks' identifying features, you want to look at their hips, their pelvis. You can see that the fish will have different types of fins. So a male shark will have fins that look like this, where they have a little bit sticking out, and the females will look like this, where they don't. That extra part that's sticking out is called a clasper. It's very easy to tell if you look at the belly of a shark or a stingray. Oh, and we have one here, and if we look really closely at their pelvic fins, which are right where their pelvis is, this is a girl, a female, because she doesn't have those extra fingers hanging off of her pelvic fins. If you'd like to take a good look, just look at pictures of sharks and stingrays from the internet. You'll be able to tell them apart really quickly if you just take a little good look at that fin. All right, the next question is, Whitehorn Public School would like to know, will sharks eat other sharks? Yes. Not so much those bigger sharks won't eat bigger sharks, but there are a lot of small sharks in the world, and they naturally do get predated on by larger sharks. So, and there are also some other fish that will eat sharks. Like an example would be a grouper. Some groupers get really large, like over 300 pounds, and they could easily eat a little shark. Our next question, Miss Craig's class would like to know, how do we know how many fish to put in a tank? Well, we actually are going to kind of learn from other aquariums. So if another aquarium had success at putting that many in that habitat, then we look at that. And then we also think about how it survives in the wild. Does it like to move a lot? Does it grow really big? Does it like to live in a group? And we take all of that into account when designing their habitat space and also thinking about what animals to put them with in their habitat. So like here in this habitat, we don't have too many small fish in here because we want to make sure everybody gets food, and fish are pretty competitive with eating. So we are always looking at what other aquariums are doing and also doing our research and learning more about those animals in their wild habitats. And another question from Miss Craig's class is, do sharks see color? No, sharks are colorblind. But that doesn't stop them from being able to see. So they can, like those sharks, they can see us, they can see me. They don't really know I'm wearing red, but they can see me. And our turtles, in case you're wondering, can see color. So every time I'm back there, I stand at the back and I wear these bright colors, and our turtles can easily spot me because I'm not going to feed them, but they think I will. Our non-nonies class would like to know, how do we clean the habitats? So we actually go in the water to clean most of our habitats. So that means scrubbing stuff clean. So we have special scrub brushes to clean the fake coral and also to clean the rocks, and then other special cloths to clean the other side of the acrylic so that we don't scratch it. And on top of that, we go into every single habitat we can easily fit into, which includes this habitat and the piranhas. And we go in there with those animals. The only time we ever take the animals out for cleaning is if they are venomous or something that could harm us. So our lionfish or our jellyfish, we will take those out when we are doing our cleanings. Miss Chappelle's Hills, grade 6s would like to know, has anyone ever gotten hurt by an animal during a feeding? And the answer is, it happens all the time. The stingrays will bite the divers when we hand feed them because we are using our hands and putting them in their mouth. Stingrays have flat crushing teeth to crush their prey, and they normally eat shellfish. So if our fingers go close to their mouth, they are going to sometimes probably get injured. It doesn't leave any lasting damage, but it does hurt, like you're getting your hand slammed in a drawer or door. And on top of that, in our other habitat, Rainbow Reef, divers lose their hair because the fish think it's delicious. And it does hurt when they pull the hair out, but it won't leave any lasting damage as well. We always take safety precautions when we are feeding, and we don't want us to get hurt while we are doing our jobs. The only reason the stingrays and those fish do that is because that's what they're normally used to eating. So like in our stingray habitat, we are hand feeding them, so our fingers do smell like food. They know our texture of our fingers is not food, and sometimes they get a little confused, so we call it a love bite. And our last question is from Mrs. Bloor's class. What's our biggest animal here? Glad you asked. That is our sawfish. So we have 2 green sawfish. The largest one here at the aquarium is around 4 meters long and close to 500 pounds, and it is the lady of the 2. So we have a male and a female, and the female is quite a bit longer. Her rostrum is over 1 meter long. That's a big nose. And she's very clumsy because her head weighs so much. And that is all. Thank you so much for tuning in. And just to let everyone know, all of the turtles that naturally live in Ontario are at risk or endangered. So please drive slowly when you're crossing where a turtle might be. If they happen to be in an area where they are reproducing or near a sandy beach area, do drive slowly, because even though they are lake turtles, terrapins, they still go onto sandy beaches to lay their eggs, and be very careful with those animals. And see you on World Oceans Day, which is June 8th, and we'd be happy to welcome all of you. Thank you all again for listening, and I hope you have a great long weekend. Bye, friends.